Attention, you're listening to The Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk and education. Be advised, the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. And now, coming to you from the Full Suite Wealth Studios, here's your conservative but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, that is right, my friends. You have tuned in to America's home for conservative, not bitter talk. I'm your host, the one and only Todd Huff here. You know, I've been a little bit under the weather here the past few days. I'm okay. I think I shared with you I had a migraine last week, and then I'm not complaining here. I'm just telling you what's going on. If I'm sound a little bit different today or whatever, I normally springtime is not the time for me to get sick. So anyway, but we're doing fine, and it's good to be here. Hope you had a good weekend. You undoubtedly know that Spirit Airlines has now basically gone out of existence. I want to talk about this today. I want to talk about this because, you know, it's a remarkable thing to me. Listen, there are laws on the books, antitrust laws, and we'll get into this today. Antitrust laws basically are designed to ensure that there is competition in the marketplace. And so in a free market society like we live in, you have to balance some things. Number one, for people who have created something new for the marketplace, whatever that looks like, whether it's something that can be patented, something like physically patented, like a device where you say that, you know, we own some particular inventor owns a particular way of creating a product or whatever, or whether something's trademarked, you know, protecting intellectual property. Those things are important in a free market economy. We'll get into this, but so is competition. So there's tension there. There's tension there. You want to give consumers the ability to have choices, because what choice does is that it puts downward pressure on prices. It's really the only thing that puts downward pressure on prices, and that is healthy in a free market economy. Competition is a good thing. It's one of the underlying, I should say, principles in capitalism is that, hey, we have competition that says we can provide this product, this service for X, and this company can do it for Y, and then the companies can hash it out. Well, we do it better. That's why we charge a little bit more. We, you know, get it faster. It's been said you can have any two of these three things, but you can't have all three: good, fast, and cheap. So do you want it fast and cheap? And then it's not good. Do you want it good and fast? Then it's not cheap. Do you want it good? I mean, take your pick, right? Do you want it fast and whatever the combination I left out there? But you get the idea. So I'm going to talk about this today because this could have been avoided. And now the very people who helped create this mess in our government, and too many times it involves people in our government, and that's not to say that Spirit, of course, didn't make its own decisions and have its own problems, because that's certainly the case. But anyway, I want to talk about this today, and that's the direction we're headed. There's other things I might get to as well. I don't know how long I want to talk about this. Sometimes the process of communicating verbally leads me to want to hammer on another point that comes up a little bit longer than I anticipated, but there's other things in the news that we can get to as well, with this being a Monday. So that's where we're headed today, my friends. And if you're dealing with discomfort, you're not alone. You may be tired of living off of prescriptions, managing those side effects. A lot of folks are looking for something natural they can trust, and this might include you as well. That's why I've mentioned Christopher's Organic Botanicals. That's a family-run natural kratom company rooted in truth, transparency, and tradition. They partner directly with farmers in Indonesia. They lab test everything before it ever reaches your hands. There is no hype. There are no synthetics. There is no funny business. It's the real deal done right. Now, real kratom is tested. It's reasonably and responsibly sourced. You've probably heard horror stories about kratom. Those come from the shady sellers who provide synthetic garbage to the marketplace that isn't even real kratom. So, do your research. And once you decide this is a product that you would like to try, start with their Kratom Starter Pack. Coupon code Todd Huff will save you 10% off your first order. Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. That's Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. Truth, tradition, transparency. Okay, so let's get into this. So you may have heard, you probably heard over the weekend that Spirit Airlines has basically ceased operations. In fact, if you're someone who is traveling and had tickets with Spirit, you would have seen an email or a post and basically telling you that there's nothing, there's no customer service. It's basically we're shutting down shop, and that's the end of things. And so this has caused, of course, a major problem and shakeup in the airline industry. Some airlines are trying to help the sometimes stranded Spirit customers get home with some special rates or whatever they're trying to do to help people get home. And, of course, they're trying to get this market share as well. And you may have also heard my son. My son is he wants to be a pilot. He's soon to be 17, and been studying this and playing on his, well, I'll say playing, training on his simulator and everything else for some time now. But he had told me that there's an individual who's trying to get enough money through crowdsourcing to buy Spirit Airlines. And this would be, like kind of like this article here at, businessinsider.com compares this to the ownership of the Green Bay Packers, which is a NFL, of course, franchise who's owned by about 540,000 stockholders. There's not a single billionaire running the show or whatever. It's owned by a lot of people. And so this guy posted something. His name, by the way, Hunter Peterson. He's a fan. He did some stuff with Spirit Airlines. It says here that he once flew Spirit Airlines for 24 hours straight. And he said we could buy Spirit Airlines. And so he said he kind of started this as a joke. And he's raised, I don't know where he is now, but I think he's over $50 million. Now that's still a far cry. That's still a far cry from what, say, JetBlue offered to purchase this airline for back in 2022, which I believe was $3.8 billion. That, of course, was stopped by regulators, which is really the direction we're headed here. But it's interesting to watch these things take shape and so forth. But Spirit Airlines is out of business, is shut down. And so there are obviously a lot here to unpack. There's something like 17,000, as I've read, employees who are now suddenly jobless. There are passengers who are unable to get to where they're headed. Some people are stranded, all those sorts of things. And again, as I mentioned, this obviously, there's factors here, right? There's multiple factors. Number one, you have to look squarely at the airline and say, what did they do wrong? What did they do that they shouldn't have done? What should they have done that they didn't do? Those sorts of things. And those are fair questions. Those are absolutely fair questions. And it's obvious that these sorts of things need to be analyzed and reviewed. And of course, some people want to blame a $50 bag charge for not a carry-on, but a checked bag or some such thing. And those things may certainly be the case, because this is listen, there's different types of airline. This is like a budget airline, right? This is a low-cost airline. It is a competitor, of course, with the big names like Delta and United and American, but it's a different class of airline that typically finds the budget-conscious flyer. So, people are having their opinions about this, and of course, management and the executive decisions certainly play a role in this. But there's another part of this that's also something that we need to be aware of. And I want to go to this Town Hall article, townhall.com. You can Google this if you like. It's written here by Joseph Chalfant, Chalfant, Joseph Chalfant. It says this, headline here, Elizabeth Warren killed Spirit Airlines and now she's complaining about it. Senator Elizabeth Warren, in partnership with former Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, I want to make sure I get that right, as he's lectured at people on pronouncing his name correctly. I think we nailed it. And President Joe Biden are the ones with Spirit Airlines' blood on their hands after working tirelessly to block the merger of the budget airline with JetBlue. Now, that being said, there's an inserted little clip from, I want to call it Twitter. It's X. You can't teach an old dog new tricks here. So, hold on here. All right, so cue that up. So, here's Pete Buttigieg back in when was this? This would have been 2020. Let me see if I can find it here. 2024 or 22. Yeah, I don't see the date here. But here's Pete Buttigieg on Fox News talking about
that's changing
JetBlue
today.
merging or purchasing and then merging with Spirit Airlines. The government regulators shut this down. Pete Buttigieg was the Department of Transportation head, Secretary of Transportation, when this happened. And here's what he said at the time.
Our department, the Department of Transportation, has generally not gotten involved in these merger cases, but that's changing today. It is so important to make sure that passengers have choices, that they have access to low fares, that they have access to competition.
Okay, so you heard that, right? So it's not normal that the Department of Transportation gets involved in these things. But they got involved in that because they didn't want JetBlue to merge with Spirit Airlines. And why did they not want them to merge? Because they say we want to make sure that passengers have choices, that they have access to low fares, that they have access to competition. So, of course, the idea here is that JetBlue was going to buy Spirit, eliminate the option for people to choose Spirit. This was going to raise prices because there would be less competition. And so regulators stepped in to stop it. And not just regulators, not just people in the bureaucracy, but people who were in the Biden administration. So going back to the article here, it says, now that the company, referring to Spirit Airlines, is dead, the hyper-aggressive Democrat wants to complain, talking here about Elizabeth Warren. By the way, I'll tell you, Elizabeth Warren, Trump refers to her as Pocahontas. As I've shared on this program before, I have been documented by a couple of genealogists to be the 13th great-grandson of Pocahontas, though there is, I will tell you in transparency, there is some question about the authenticity or we don't know. We don't know, but I'm still going to hang on to this, and I'm still going to say It's been documented by a couple of genealogists now that I am going to continue to hold, because if listen, if I'm not descendant by blood, I'm just going to say that I identify as a direct descendant of Pocahontas. So either way, this title will remain the same for me, the self-appointed spokesperson of the Pocahontas family. We don't care. We don't care that Trump calls her Pocahontas. He's not mocking Pocahontas. What he's actually doing is he's mocking the silliness that comes out of the mouths of people who engage in identity politics, who think that because they're 1/64th or 1/128th or whatever crazy percentage they say that they're a particular, descendant or whatever of a certain race or ethnicity or whatever, that somehow qualifies them for, I don't know, government benefits, being the department head of Native American Studies at a university, whatever the case may be. That's much more ridiculous and offensive to sensible people than Trump referring to someone who basically is an opportunist and who's trying to use identity politics and race to get ahead when she has no idea. She's a danger, by the way, to this great nation. So I stand by the nickname Pocahontas that Trump gives her. But I do think, perhaps, I'm a fan of Rush, the late, great Rush Limbaugh. And there was a lot of nicknames he used that I thought were pretty funny. I liked John Kerry, who served in Vietnam, as Rush used to say. But I also enjoyed, perhaps his greatest nickname was Pocahontas. That's what he called Elizabeth Warren. Not just Pocahontas, Pocahontas, a fake, make-believe descendant of Pocahontas. Anyway, she's in the middle of this communist senator that we have from the People's Republic of Massachusetts. She tweeted, this goes back, she posted on X. This goes back, here we go. This goes back to 2024. This is what she was out there saying at the time of this potential merger. And again, I played that soundbite from Pete Buttigieg saying the same thing, saying it just wasn't going to be the bureaucrats and the internal mechanism of politics and that sort of thing, the enforcement of law. The administration was actually going to, the Biden administration was going to step in and make sure that JetBlue did not merge with Spirit Airlines. This is a post she made back in March of 2024, speaking out against this merger. She said, I've warned for months that a JetBlue Spirit Airlines merger would have led to fewer flights and higher fares. Justice, she tagged two people, Justice ATR and the US DOT were right to stand up for consumers and fight against runaway airline consolidation. This is a Biden win for flyers. 2 years ago, it is remarkable. 2 years ago, she was celebrating this as a victory, and now there's not an airline. It is so interesting. It is a case study for all people to see right there before our eyes. Now, I'm not saying that government, and we'll talk more about this, I'm not saying that government doesn't have a role in antitrust law. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail, making sure that there is competition, making sure that there's not just a few options, that they consolidate, that they drive down competition, prices go up, and all that sort of stuff. There certainly is a role. But this did exactly the opposite. She was cheering 2 years ago, Pocahontas here, that this was a victory. That by preventing JetBlue and Spirit Airlines from merging, they made sure that there were more flights and cheaper fares. Because she said a merger would have led to fewer flights and higher fares. I would suggest the senator rethink this. Because now that there is no Spirit Airlines, there's certainly are fewer flights. We know people got stranded and had to be reassigned to other aircraft. And I don't know about the higher fares yet. I'm sure fares are higher because of the cost of jet fuel and that sort of thing. But it's interesting. They were celebrating this as a victory, and now their solution prevented this from prevented Spirit Airlines from surviving. At least was an integral part of that. My friends, more to say about this as the program goes along here. But friends, let's be honest, when your financial world starts getting a little bit more complicated, you need more than one size fits all advice. That's where Full Suite Wealth. I told you I was recovering here from not feeling well, but that's where Full Suite Wealth shines the brightest. Their team specializes in working with families and individuals at your level. They offer personalized guidance that goes far beyond the basics, from private equity and private credit to options, strategies, and coordinated legal planning. Full Suite Wealth helps you see the big picture, make confident decisions about your legacy, and it's about making sure you have a dedicated team there to guide you each and every step of the way so that you can focus on what matters most, my friends, your family, your goals, your future. If you want real confidence in your financial life, head on over to fullsuitewealth.com now. That's fullsuitewealth.com. Build your legacy. Secure your future. All right. Now, got to take a break here. When we get back, I want to continue talking about government creating problems. You remember Reagan said the 8 most terrifying words in the English language are this: I'm from the government and I'm here to help. I guess that's 9 words. Those are the most terrifying words in the English language. So they stepped in, they said back in 2024, to prevent this merger so that we would have access to cheaper fares and more flights. Today, it's proven to do exactly the opposite. The question is, listen, who's going to remember this? Who's going to hold these folks accountable? All that stuff. People will just continue down this path, I know, but it is a real teachable moment. It is an opportunity to learn, to admit our mistakes, to admit for those who trust government that is a fool's game. But I've got to take a break, my friends. Sit tight, back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Talking here about failed Spirit Airlines. And I want to be fair. I'm not here to blame all of this on the government, but I am here to blame some of it on the government because Spirit Airlines, I don't know why, I don't know Freedom. Maybe I've said Freedom twice today. Spirit Airlines had a solution. They had a solution to their problem. They were going to merge with JetBlue. And the government stepped in, and they were out. The Biden administration back in 2024, Pete Buttigieg was out there on Fox News saying how they were doing something more direct. Normally, administrations would stay out of this and let the courts and the antitrust stuff take its, have its role, but they were stepping in actively to make sure that JetBlue would not merge with Spirit Airlines. And as a result, we don't have Spirit Airlines. They're gone as of whenever this weekend. And yeah, maybe somebody can buy them. I don't know. It doesn't look good, right? I mean, they've closed up operations. I shared with you off the top that somebody's trying to do a crowdfunding for the airlines, which is interesting. They're a long way from it, but they've raised at least commitments of tens of millions of dollars. You got to get a lot more than that. But regardless, this is a moment, I think, a teachable moment, as Rush used to say, a moment where we can actually learn, a moment when we can say, let's stop worrying about being right and wrong, and let's learn from the lesson that's before us. Let's learn from the lesson that's before us. Going back to this article at Town Hall, it says, now that the company, talking about Spirit Airlines, is dead, the hyper-progressive Democrat wants to complain about the lack of competition in the air travel industry. So she tweeted out on April 30th, the big four airlines, American, Delta, Southwest, United, controls 75% of the U.S. market. Fewer choices equal higher prices for you. Now, on X, you can do this thing where you can add context. And so it says readers have added context, which I love this. In 2024, Senator Warren, also known as Pocahontas, supported the Biden administration's Department of Justice actively suing to initiate this lawsuit to prevent the merger between JetBlue and Spirit, fearing, quote, fewer flights and higher fares. That's referencing the post to X that I read just last segment. Now Spirit shut down, resulting in fewer flights and less competition. That's exactly right. It's exactly right. You know, it is amazing to me the number of people I've shared with you that I've got someone who's close to us who is just rabidly anti-capitalistic. And whatever, make your choices, but this is a fool's game. Capitalism has proven itself time and time again that it is the best method, the best system of economics that exists. Now, of course, you have individual capitalists who will do bad things, but the system itself is sound. It is good. It is aligned with freedom. It is aligned with you being able to make decisions for yourself, your family, all of that, without interference from the government and everything. But it's amazing to me, people who fear or even hate big business. I'm not here to tell you to like big business. I'm not here to say that there's things about big business you shouldn't hate, because I think there's some things that you'll find in most big corporations that are candidly reprehensible. Small business, medium-sized businesses are different animals, but again, nothing's perfect. But it is so vastly superior to what a government-controlled economy can produce, which is the only thing a government-controlled economy can produce is equality in suffering, managing a lack of resources as we nosedive and people are not able to have the things that they want and need. By the way, that reminds me, Iran's economy is in shambles, and it's apparent that they are in severe economic crisis. I hate this for the people of Iran, but as far as what this might mean long term for this conflict with Iran, that these economic pressures might create an opportunity to fix this problem in greater ways than just what we're doing now, which again is not pretty. It's causing gas prices to be all over the place and so forth. But they're trying to control their economy, and it will not work in the long run. Those lunatic ayatollahs running the Iranian regime are dangerous both to their citizens and to the rest of the world. But regardless, back here to this economy and what's happening with these airlines, it's remarkable to me how people can just blindly trust our government. Oh, the government stepped in to protect me. They said no to Spirit. Why do they think Spirit Airlines was trying to merge with JetBlue? It's because they were having financial difficulty. They were struggling. They were trying to find a solution, and they thought the only option, or at least the best option at the time, 2 years ago, before they were prevented from merging with JetBlue by the Biden administration, cheered on by Pocahontas here, senator from Massachusetts. The only option that they thought was viable, the best option for survival, was the merger. Now, in the past few weeks, Trump had come out and talked about trying to help secure a $500 million emergency loan for Spirit Airlines, and lenders just, it fell apart. It fell apart, and so there was no viable option for that, and the airline shut down. But you trace this back a couple years, and you can see the government's fingers on it. And why do we trust them? Why do we trust them? I understand that people in corporations do things that could pad their pocketbooks. They try to make themselves more money. I understand that. But they're held directly accountable by their customers. And if they don't provide what the customers want, by the way, we willingly, when it comes to an airline, we willingly pay the airline whatever price that we agree to pay to fly from point A to point B and back. That's not how it works with our government. The government says you pay this. If you don't believe that, you try not to pay your payroll withholdings on your paycheck, or try not to, when it comes April 15th, try to avoid the payments there. The reality is that they don't negotiate. They don't provide anything. You don't have to give your permission for them to tell you what you owe them in the form of taxes. They're just going to take it. And if you don't think they will, then try them, and they will show you that they will. And so I'm not here to defend big business. I'm not here to defend Spirit Airlines. I am here to say that what our government did created exactly the opposite of what they told us that it wanted to do. And why is it? Why is it that because we elect some people who we say, the media tells us is very, very smart. Pete Buttigieg was supposed to be this genius guy. I mean, that doesn't seem very genius to me. What is so dangerous about the merger? Would it not have been better? There's a JetBlue today. Think about it. Just think about it logically. There's a JetBlue today. In fact, JetBlue, my son had told me, had already basically purchased all of the gates, or most of the gates. I don't know if it's all of them, but many of the gates, maybe all, that Spirit Airlines was using at these airports. So we're at the same place, but now you have all the other problems that come. The immediacy of people losing their jobs, people getting stranded. A merger would have been so much nicer and neater. People still would have probably lost jobs. I don't know the details of that, but probably. But there would have been, those aircraft would have been operating under a new banner, or maybe they would have kept the brand. I don't know how that was going to work. But the bottom line here is that whatever solution was created by Spirit Airlines and JetBlue was shot down by the government. And now we have no Spirit Airlines. No Spirit Airlines that merged with JetBlue. They're just poof, gone, out of existence. All because the government was trying to protect the consumer. Now, I do think that there's a time for antitrust law to be enforced and so forth, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the next break. But this is mismanaged, as so many things are, by our government. Friends, one of the biggest challenges for conservatives like you is finding ways to ensure your values align with just how you live your life, how you operate, and that includes how you invest your money. So I love what the team at 48 Financial is doing. They specialize in what they call biblically responsible investing. That means they screen out companies that do not align with your faith, your values, so you're not funding things that go completely against what you believe in. We have to be careful here. It's easy to just miss what some of these corporations are doing, and some of it is absolutely undermining the things that you fight for politically and the things that you believe, the values you have. These companies, they sometimes are the opposite of what you believe. So 48 Financial helps you decide, helps you find out what degree your values align with your investments. You can take a quick assessment at 48financial.com/Todd. That's 48financial.com/Todd. Quick time out for me, my friends. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Third and final segment of the program today. I want to talk here a little bit about antitrust and competition in the marketplace. I alluded to this off the top, and I want to make sure that I get to it. So there is a time for the government to step in and to say, hey, listen, this is not something that is good for the marketplace. There's consolidation of businesses here, whatever that is. If that's in the airline industry, the grocery industry, whatever. Just we want competition because, as I mentioned off the top, the only real way to keep downward pressure on prices is for there to be competition. And so, if I can buy a certain product or get access to a certain service by paying for it from competitor A, if there's not a competitor B, or if there's another competitor A that's, ready to charge high prices too, the more that there is, right? I guess the fewer competitors, there's fewer options. And when you have fewer options, you are going to pay more. It's just the way that it is. It's the law of economics. And so having multiple options is good, as many as possible. The government's job is not to create competitors, but to say, listen, we're not going to see a reduction in competitors if a merger or some other activity that has to be approved by the government, if they see some dire consequences for consumers. It's legit to be engaged in antitrust activity, but it has to be applied correctly. There's several airlines, of course, that you can fly. There's the big four who do control a lot of market share, but there's a lot of other carriers. And to pretend that Spirit is comparable to American and Delta is not fair. It's more, I don't know who's in their class, but I think Frontier might be in that class. Maybe Allegiant, maybe. I don't know exactly. My son can tell you. So it's good. One of the reasons free markets work is because there's competition. And if there's not competition, there's no downward pressure on price. Now, I mentioned at the beginning, the government also wants to, encourage new ideas to the marketplace. And that's where patents and intellectual property law come into play, because you don't want someone who's created this idea that can do wonders for a certain sector of the economy or whatever, an innovation. You don't want them to be fearful of bringing it to market and having all the competitors immediately be able to copy what they do. They ought to be able to own that, especially if they created it, if it's their concept, they ought to be able to own that so that they can be financially rewarded. Otherwise, why would they have taken the risk to start a company, develop the product? There's a lot of things that go into that, right? You open yourself up to potential litigation, and you've got to get insurance and production set up. There's a lot of things that go into this. And so if you can't make your investment back and then enough profit to make it worth the risk, you're not going to do it. So you want to protect those people too, but you also want to make sure that there's competition. And so there's a balance there. I just, listen, I'm not an expert in this stuff, but just as a casual observer, even the basis upon which the merger was rejected, it just seems crazy to me that they wanted to prevent that merger for the sake of competition in airlines. Nobody was going to be moving into the top four. And the reality is now the one that you prevented, one of the airlines that you prevented from merging, is now in non-existence. Non-existence. It's shut down. It's over and done with. Kaput. Because the government stepped in to save people from these evil corporations. And I think that's the lesson here today, if I can put a nice, neat little bow on this today, is that the government, and far too many people believe this, the government is just this altruistic, wonderful, just organization, this group of people that's looking out for our best interests, and that the capitalists are selfish, but the government workers, and the government officials, they have, no dog in the fight, no axe to grind. They're just there for pure purposes. That is absolute hogwash. It is. In fact, I would go as far to say it may be the opposite. Listen, I know that the capitalists, which I'm a capitalist, capitalists are looking for ways to benefit. But they look for ways to benefit whereby they get the cooperation, the willing cooperation of people who want to buy from them. And so it has to be a win-win. Government, hear me say this, government doesn't have to be. Government says, and then you comply. Government is force at its core. Let that sink in. There's no policy, or there's no ticket policy that's force, and you're not forced to fly or not fly on an airline. Government's the one that has that power. They're the ones that wield that power, not Spirit Airlines, not JetBlue, not American, not Delta. Our government. And it's about time people begin to see that as the real threat. I'm out of time here today, my friends. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening. SDG.